Welcome to week 8 of the Leukopak Lady. For the next 3 weeks, I will be covering regulatory issues that affect cellular starting materials for cell and gene therapy. Donors and collections, practices and standards, all related to what I consider pre-manufacturing. So in my experience working with allogeneic cell therapy developers, I've seen some of the most prominent regulatory issues they face are with the starting materials, including cell-based products like leukopaks. Developers must rely on organizations that produce key materials and reagents to do everything correctly, to meet their specific needs, and to follow all standards and regulations. This requires auditing, monitoring, and contracting, as well as tightly controlled procedures, handling, and paperwork, plus a lot of trust. But it's not always easy to understand what the right regulations and standards are, especially for healthy donors and collections intended for further manufacturing and allogeneic therapy use. It's much more cut and dry for autologous therapies and allogeneic therapies meant for direct transfusion. From the current FDA regulations and standards put out by accrediting bodies, I don't see a clear and obvious path for allogeneic therapy developers to follow. I think it's full of contradictions and rules that don't make sense for this branch of the cell therapy field, which is why I think there's so much chaos in the field right now and why every developer's IND requires following the regulations differently. I totally get that manufactured allogeneic therapies are still new and none have been FDA approved yet, but I think it's wrong to try and apply standards and regulations meant for self-donation or direct transfusion to therapies that are neither. And although more developers are focusing on this area of the manufacturing process, many still treat the qualification of donors and the collection of cellular starting material as an afterthought. So regulatory topics that I will discuss over the next 3 weeks in the context of cellular starting materials and leukopaks are consenting donors and sharing donor data with developers, donor eligibility and testing, both FDA requirements and developer requirements. I'll talk about the classification of non-mobilized leukopaks as blood products, but the expectation of treating those blood products like tissues. I'll talk about good tissue practices and good manufacturing practices. I'll go over what it means for GMP compliance specifically to developers. I'll also talk about the role of accreditation and standards in meeting GMP compliance, FDA regulations, and developers' needs. And finally, I'll talk about documentation. So on the next episode, come back because I'll talk about donor consent and sharing donor data with developers. See you then.